Okay, you're live.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining my deep dive today. And we have one of my favorite people on earth on our deep dive today. It's Nancy Braithwaite, and we're here to speak about simplicity. So Nancy and I met probably in the late 80s when I was an editor at House Beautiful, and she was a designer in Atlanta, and we were tasked with creating the house of the 90s. So House Beautiful used to do these projects where we would move all of the furniture in and photograph it and then move all of the furniture out. And Nancy and I were together for weeks upon weeks, and it was a real bonding moment. I loved every second of it. And she has been my teacher, my friend, my inspiration since then. And Nancy, I'm so grateful that you joined us here today. I mean, you are truly one of America's greatest designers, and I think people are in for a treat today. There's no doubt about it. And one of the things that I love about you most, besides the fact that you have incredible integrity and a vision, is the fact that you're very modest and you're not a self-promoter, and you've managed to arrive at cult status. I mean, I really believe that you have groupie fans. Your book Simplicity is now in its 15th printing, I think you told me. So I don't know, I think that's a really incredible feat. You know, when you've succeeded without, I mean, I know you've worked your tail off, but you haven't worked on really, you've never had a PR agent or anyone like that. And you have arrived through sheer talent. So thanks for joining us today. I'm so happy.
Thank you for having me, Dara. It's fun to be here. It's fun to see you as always.
Yeah,
my friends.
So can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and when you knew you wanted to become an interior designer?
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Chicago. I am so happily a Midwesterner. I just am a Midwesterner. And through the years, I've had lots of clients in Chicago. And the moment I get off of the plane, I go, I'm home. I feel like I'm home. The people are polite. They're so friendly, and they look like me. They look like me, which is pretty amazing. There's a certain sensibility about them that is simplicity. And I relate to that. Not too much makeup, not, just simple.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I have, when I'm interviewing for assistants, I often try to get a Midwestern assistant. I think there's something, it's like the salt of the earth, there's something, I don't know, there's an integrity there. So I exactly what they're talking about.
And twist and turn. I mean, you get off at LaGuardia, you go, whoa, here we go, which I love too, a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
But
sure.
My folks are in Chicago.
Okay. And how many years have you been in Atlanta though, which is interesting, right?
35.
35.
Yeah.
And you do have a little bit of a Southern accent, which is unusual.
You think? I don't.
I do. I hear it a little bit.
Okay. Okay.
So when did you know you wanted to become an interior designer?
Well, there wasn't a specific time, but my mother was a very tiny, really beautiful woman, tiny. If she weighed 100 pounds, that was a lot. And she found it very difficult to find ready-made clothes to fit her. There just were none available. So she began to design and make her own clothes. As she sewed, I watched, and guess what? Pretty soon I was designing and making my own clothes, and I had the nerve to wear them. And this was pretty scary stuff, because what I designed was, years later, what really happened that was so helpful is the sewing techniques I had learned. The soft furnishings of an interior, the draperies and the bedspreads and the pillows and all of that require sewing technique knowledge. And once you have that, you can be more creative and artful in your constructions. So that sewing, I always say every interior designer should have 2 or 3 semesters of sewing. Because
Interesting.
the workrooms always used to say to me, we love working with you because you understand how things go together. And I do.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And you still have your, like, you wear mostly blouses, right? And you still have them made, you still design them and have them made.
All of them. I have a wonderful seamstress here who is now working for the movies. She is skyrocketed in fame. And she makes them all. I design them, she makes them. It's my little, it's kind of like my dope. I really am very excited. I'm about ready to see her in a couple of weeks, so I get very excited about that.
That's really cool.
Love
Well,
it.
I have we have our new magazine called Frederick, right? And
Mhm.
one of the most exciting things was I got an email from my 7th grade home ec teacher.
There
Who
you go.
taught me how to sew. Not that I was ever very good at it, but she subscribed to the issue, which really like warmed my heart. I thought that was so nice.
I took my design degree through the home ec department. In those days, you did that. I don't know if that still happens, but sewing was part of it. And I'm so glad. I mean, I'm really glad.
Yeah, and I don't think that people really put a lot of weight into that, but I could really see how learning to sew could be an amazing advantage if you're
It
an
is.
designer.
It is. You can turn a drapery on its tail feathers and do all kinds of things that people go, wow, I never thought of that before. I remember the first time I did silk velvet draperies. That was an experience because silk velvet is the most precious fabric on the market. And I was working on this very important kind of high profile job. And the workroom head said to me, why don't you make the draperies out of silk velvet? I went, silk velvet? Guess what? The draperies were all silk velvet. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
So cool. I bet they were amazing.
Yeah, they were.
That's cool. All right. So then how did you get your start in interior design then?
Well, I graduated from Michigan State University. Again, there's that Midwest coming through. And I began my career as an industrial designer with Sunbeam Corporation. Along the way, I met my husband, Jim, and we moved to Atlanta. And at the time, House and Garden was a very well-read shelter magazine. And it was popular and everybody would die to be in it. And they ran an article from time to time that was young designers to watch. And they encouraged you to send in your work. And I sent my work in and they published it. I was someplace way beyond. I was so thrilled. I really thought, well, my design career is beginning. But what I didn't know at the time is that my design education, my education was really beginning. I didn't even know what I didn't know.
Right, right. And then what happened then? I mean, you obviously you got clients and all that kind of thing. So what was the next chain of events?
And the big thing that happened to me then was, I'll never forget it. I was really struggling with my own living room. And a great place for a designer to hone their craft is in your own home because no one's, being critical. You can do anything you want. And I was really struggling with the design of my living room. A friend came over, one of my best friends, and said, well, can't you just make it pretty? And I went, well, what does that mean? I thought, well, I can do pretty. I wanted something more. Pretty was just not enough. And a week or so later, I went to the Kips Bay Show House in New York. And there I saw a library that was designed by Thierry Despont, the French architect and designer.
Such a talented man.
Oh my God. I just stood there. I was mesmerized. I didn't even know what was going on. And I'm sure they would like me to move along a little bit because I was planted because I couldn't quite understand what had happened. And I thought, you know what? This is something more. And I need to find out what this is. and I began my quest for something more.
And you did it mostly at home as your experiment, and then you wound up getting clients? Is that what happened?
Well, it took me a long while to find out what it was. And I always played at home because I wasn't cruising, but I began to play in my, my clients' rooms. It was a revelation to me that design was so very important, and it really had real meaning. And so much of it turns out to be just fluff, but the really good stuff is wonderful, just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, you really do have such a unique way of seeing things and distilling things. I think that is, I mean, obviously you're a creator, but you're also a distiller. I really think that you get things down to their essence, which is so unusual. There's no fluff.
I now see my interiors in a very, very specific way. I think my role as an interior designer, and I take this very seriously, is to create unique environments, much like Thierry Despont had done, with clear, forceful, powerful visual statements. And that's what I don't want to walk into a room and go, well, all right. I want to walk into a room and say, wow, I want to be enveloped with a visual memory. I really do. It's what drives me completely. And I work and I work and I work until I get to that point.
So some people must have thought you were crazy, right? I mean, here's this woman who is so deliberate and unusual. Did you ever run into that where people didn't understand who
I tried not to let anybody know how I was working so hard. I'd like to, because that doesn't instill a whole lot of confidence with someone that you're spending a lot of money with and time with. And I would come home and work, and I'd study, and then I studied some more. But I knew there was something more out there. I knew that the track I was on, I would look at some, again, like Thierry Despont, or I would look at the Albert Hadley room, a Billy Baldwin room. There was something very different, and you knew it instantly when you saw it.
Yeah. But you didn't copy it. I mean, you didn't copy it, and you took the lessons from it and you made it your own. I think really significant.
Yeah, and I love interiors, once again, that captivate the senses and have the viewer going, wow. The oohs and ahs. I go for the oohs and ahs because I think, I go, good.
But you have to feel that too, probably, right? I mean, that's
yes.
that you're striving for.
Oh yeah. I can't. No, it's not. I don't let them know, but I have to work and work and work till I reach what I call my PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And do that, I walk away, I rest for a day or two or whatever the timing happens to be. Then I go back and look again, and if my eye is fully filled, my senses are kind of titillated, I know I've done the job I need to do.
Yeah. I remember when we did that House of the 90s, we had a lot of late nights, but we were struggling with the living room because House Beautiful back then was a pretty commercial magazine. It wasn't exactly an artful magazine. And you had your own sensibility that you wanted to get across, but it also had to be somewhat commercial because of the magazine that we were, creating for. And we had found this screen that had mother of pearl like inlay, like in a squares. And we were struggling with the room because it just didn't have that power that you were talking about. And you had the idea of creating a checkerboard in the screen, and we cut out like blue construction paper and we put it in every other one. And it was genius. It was like all of a sudden something that was rather bland had a point of view. It was such a simple thing, and it really carried the room. I mean, I will always remember that.
Every part of a room has to have that same excitement. A room is a composition. There are many compositions in a room, And you need to analyze not only the totality of the design of the room, but all these minor compositions, because they all add to the whole.
Right, right. All right, so I've had the privilege of photographing many of your projects. You know, the House Beautiful thing was the first, that house of the 90s, but we did a project on the Upper East Side that was very formal. And then we did your own house in Atlanta, which I think is one of the greatest houses of all time. Then there's your house in South Carolina, which is also incredible. Can you speak about some of the threads that run through each project? And I think we have some slides to look at too.
Yeah, can we have slide 1? Aha, there we are. This is a New York townhouse that I did, and it's one of my favorite projects of all time. The previous owners had applied elaborate moldings every place. It had mirrored walls and ceilings. It had gilded faux finishes everywhere and fanciful cherubs. No surface was left untouched. It was awful. We spent 3 months sanding, scraping, and revealing the 20th century neoclassical architecture. And of course, Dara, you know, because you photographed it. You were the art director with House Beautiful. I purchased the finest Biedermeier that I possibly could, as well as French antiques. And adding a layer of heavily corded silks, damask, and taffetas, and a finish that was this ethereal monochromatic pale colors. I think it all ended up in a very unique interior with a forceful, clear identity.
It was so beautiful. They no longer live here, I know, but I think that, I mean, I think it was such an amazing thing because you had such a, it's so spare really, but so elegant at the same time.
Yeah, my spareness, I knew at this point, it is clear to me when I look at this picture that I was clearly kind of understanding what there's something more that I was after. I think this room represents something more. It is very, very, to me, it's very elegant, but yet it's very simple. And it holds the eye. It holds the eye.
Yeah, and every single thing counts. It's really exquisite.
Yeah. Oh, there's no.
All right, Annie, let's go to the next slide if you don't mind.
Slide 2. Yeah, slide.
Oh, so gorgeous. So this is your own house in Atlanta.
This is my own house. This is where I'm sitting now. Not in that room, but I'm in my own house now. This is a New England farmhouse. It was designed by the Southern architect, James Means. The plans for this house reside in the Atlanta History Center. This house represents a part of the architectural history of Atlanta. The interior detailing is strong. The floors and ceilings are antique. I love the tall, well-proportioned windows that are set very high in the wall, flooding the room with light. The higher a window usually is set in a wall, the better the light it brings in. There's a lovely, intriguing arched passageway and American paneling details. I think the bones of this room are terrific. When we bought it, they were there, but they needed to be uncovered. The room was painted this beastly winter tour red, and the next room was beastly winter tour blue. So it was pretty tough. I think the thing that brings the interior full scale around, full loop around, is that there is a collection of American antiques that are highly curated. This is really, when you look at it, the interior furnishings match the architecture. And the two combined make a forceful, once again, clear identity. There's no mistaking what's going on. The chandeliers are particularly interesting. They were a deaccession from Winter Tour, and they're wooden, and they're 18th century. They're
cool.
beautiful.
But what
So
you
everything in
really,
the room
oh,
is.
sorry, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was saying you really redefined American country with this house. I mean, before this house, there was great stuff, you know, I mean, there was Mary Emmerling, who was really
Yep.
big on American country, but
Right.
you, I don't know, you interpreted it in a way that was so fresh and unusual and refined, I think. I mean, I never looked at American country furniture before your house. And look at this, it's just from,
Well, you know what's so interesting about this interior is it really hasn't changed much in 20 years. I mean, we've added pieces as they came on the market and we could afford to buy them. But the essence of this room, it's what it was when 20 years ago when I really did it. And you know, it's so funny. I walk through that room every day of my life. I don't want to do anything to it. I'm happy. If I find another great object that I can add, that's terrific. But I like it just as much today as I did then.
yeah, and what's cool about it is that you combine contemporary upholstery with those American antiques.
Yeah.
I think,
And overscale, they're big.
yeah, well, I know you love scale. Scale's
That's-
important to you.
Make it big. You know, I had someone say to me once, it was so funny. They were looking at our beach house and it was on tour and they all came through and the head of the group looked at me and said, you know, for such a small person, you have a lot of big ideas. I went, oh yeah. Oh yeah, I do.
That's so funny. So let me just go back to the American country furniture again. Had you not had an American house, do you think you would have been drawn to it, or did the two go hand in hand?
Well, again, I go back to what I keep saying is that I like interiors with clear, forceful, specific identities. And I don't know if this is the question you asked, I'm not sure, but I bought this because it had it. I didn't buy it because it was American. If I'd have gone into a French country interior, I'd have been fine too, but I needed something that was real and not all jerry rigged up. And this was real. And it hadn't been touched from the original people that built it.
Yeah.
It had all the original paint colors, which were dreadful beyond dreadful. Dreadful.
It's funny. And it looks like you did plaster walls, which is so beautiful.
Yeah, they're plaster walls and they're hand scraped. They give this wonderful patination.
Beautiful.
I stuck very close to the line on the renovations. And it was always, what would James Means do? Because his house, and as I say, the plans for it remain at the Atlanta History Center. It's historical, just like your house is. It's a historical property.
Gorgeous. All right, so let's go on to your beach house, because this next image is the beach house.
Well, this was really fun for me. I'd never been the client and the interior designer at the same time. This was an adventure. I drove myself crazy. We built this from the ground up. Took us 3 years. But you know what happened? This house gave me the opportunity to practice my vision, my principles, my disciplines. I was responsible here. And if it didn't look too well or too good, my fault. So I worked hand in hand with the architect. We got along famously, which of course is so important for an interior designer to work well with an architect. Not fight him, but try to tune into what he wants and he wishes, so the two of you have a vision, not just one of you. I think it's a tremendously forceful architecture, presence, and identity. Once you're in it, you go, oh, we've got 18-foot ceilings here. And these vaulted ceilings are in 3 pavilions, 3 separate pavilions in the house. And this beamed arch vaulted ceiling goes for probably 60 feet. You're only seeing just the part that's towards the ocean. I kept it very simple, very minimum, of course, because it's a house that is well used. Nothing is precious. Nothing can't stand 5 grandchildren or friends that come or friends that want to spend some time in the house without us. It's kind of indestructible. But then I had to have a little design stuff in. I have pieces by the Stuba VA, which you'll recognize, VA, and Kevin Riley. Those things were all custom made. I had a wonderful time with the light fixtures. I called Kevin Riley, who at the time I designed this 15 years ago. And I called Kevin Riley, the lighting designer. And I said, do you ever make a house call? And he said, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. I mean, so I was thrilled. I mean, we had guests staying with us at the time. I was floating on air. I went, oh my gosh, Kevin Riley came to see me. And I still remember we sat on the porch. He said, tell me your visions. And then he went and did them.
That's so cool. That's cool. Well, I've been to the house. You've been kind enough to have me and my family, my crazy family, stay with you.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. I mean, it really is one of the most remarkable places. My son learned how to swim in your pool.
Yeah, we have a wonderful little pool that is just for the children. It's only 4 feet deep. It's a large pool, but it's only 4 feet deep. And it's salt water. There's no chlorine or anything. Kids love it. And you don't worry about them in 4 feet. I mean, you keep your eye on them, of course, at all times, but you don't worry about the 4 feet.
And what are the floors? I can't remember. Are they some kind of stone?
Yes, they're stone from, I don't know. I think some of them came from France. They're just stone, large, huge, heavily cleft stone pavers.
Gorgeous. So this room is really, I mean, it's powerful, but it's really quite simple.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it's pretty spare. When did simplicity come to play such an important role in your work? Were you born with the urge to pare things down? Like how did it happen?
Well, it happened very specifically when I met Deanne Levison. She is a dealer in American antiques, a consultant to the distinguished firm of Israel Sack, who specialized in 18th century American antiques and who were responsible really for almost all or a great many of the pieces that are in Winter Tour. They only dealt with the very finest of the finest and the finest. And she was a consultant to them, and she specialized in American antiques as well. I met her, and then very shortly after, she was asked to exhibit at the Eastside Winter Antique Show. She asked me to design her booth. We had just met, so it was really a moment, a special moment in my life. And I was very excited. So, here we are, two little Southern girls going to the New York and to the Eastside Winter Antique Show. Wow, we were so happy. Scared to death. So it was here. I designed her booths, and the first one I did was featured in the New York Times living section. Above the fold, no less.
That's so cool.
We got up at 4 a.m. She went out to get the paper, and there we were. And Mark Wada had come by and said, this is very special. Tell me about you and tell me about the setting. We sold everything in the booth. Awesome. The next year, that first year, we were in a terrible position in the show. We were kind of on the outside, obviously the newcomers. Next year, they moved us right in to the center of the show. It was Deanne that taught me about authenticity, and simplicity. She instilled in me, and to this day, it's still the same, an unwavering regard for the integrity of an object. She'd show me something, and again, we were at the show, so I was surrounded by all these fabulous antiques. And we'd walk around because we were there for, a week and a half. And she would show me an object, make me examine it. She'd say, look at it, Nancy, look at it. I'm looking. What is it you see? What do you see? She taught me about the purity in distinguished objects, to understand their form and to comprehend why they're so beautiful. You cannot imagine how fortunate I was. Deanne and I became fast friends, and we spent 30 years doing this, and we spent 30 years collecting with her. It was the most exciting time of my life, and this is another part of my design philosophy, that I want things to be the best as they can be within budget reasons, of course. And I now know how to get there, which is another invaluable lesson. She taught me to see. She taught me to see. And of course, being able to see is the first step in simplicity. I need to talk a little bit about Albert Hadley, the iconic American designer. This is a quote from him, which I think is amazing. He said, seeing is a very difficult thing to do. Most people look at a lot of things, but never really see anything. Looking is emotional. Oh, wow, look. But seeing is an educational, intellectual process.
That's powerful. It gives me the chills.
Well, it's true. It's true. When you see something, it means your eye knows how to focus, compare, and contrast. That's a lot of knowledge to bring to an object. And then you need to evaluate what belongs and what doesn't belong. Because if it's a bastard piece, there'll be stuff in there that doesn't belong. Mm-hmm. And can you imagine how wonderful it is to look at anything, any object, and be able to see what's good about it and what's bad about it. And then you bring all that knowledge to your client when you select pieces for them. It's wonderful. I mean, she, other than my husband, I think, and my children, was one of the most important people in my life, for sure. Because she taught me all this.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy.
You had to be ready for it, right? I mean, not everybody would be open to that. So you were ready for that. So it's about exposure and being willing to see and educating yourself, like a desire, like a passion to educate yourself.
And once you reach that point where your eye has been educated, you can do anything. And I think today so many designers haven't had the privilege of this education like I had. I was right next to the finest at everything, whether it was French, whether it was English, whatever it was. It was all there in an antique show. Mm-hmm. And in those days, it was highly, highly curated. Today, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, I can't wait till the time where we can all go out and about and see things in person. It makes a difference. Oh my God.
I want to say one more thing. I got another quote here I really like.
Okay.
Once you are able to pare away excess and just understand what is essential and meaningful, you can do simplicity. You can reach simplicity. And he said, and I believe this, simplicity is the final achievement. After one has played a vast quantity of notes and more notes then, it is simplicity that emerges as the crowning reward of art. And you can imagine sitting at the piano and trying notes and but no, that didn't work. Stop doing that.
It's Chopin, right, that you're quoting? That's Chopin. Yeah. Well, I think simplicity is often harder to achieve, right? I mean, everything has to be right. There's no
It does, and
there's
it's
no
not.
cheating. There's no cheating, I said.
There's no what?
Cheating or hiding.
No, there's not. And you have to know, you have to be on your game. And every object in that room needs to be okay.
Yeah. Well, that is really something. I love it. It's very inspiring. And you say, for me, a life with less is always more, which I think is powerful.
Always. And
Yeah.
you had asked me a while back, what does simplicity do for someone? And my answer is very simple. It makes the living environment more approachable. You have to think about this, more approachable, more comfortable, and certainly more spacious. When there are less objects in a room, the unencumbered eye is free to travel. Deanna Friedland and her unencumbered eye is free to travel. And what's so important, it allows the design and function of all the remaining elements to become more focused. So you work on every element in the room. You don't let some slip because you have a lot less and there's more pressure on those, so to speak, to perform.
Right, right. So tell me a little bit about your kind of like the principles that you've developed over the years, because I know you have them. You know, I know scale is important to you, and things like that.
And I do, and I apply them. And I'm so fortunate. I finally come to a place where I understand what I need to do. I have developed over the years, with a lot of work and experience, what I call my rules and my guidelines, my disciplines. I call them my elements of design. Every project has these elements, no matter what. There's a hierarchy in which I consider them. The first, and so much first, is architecture. I have such a respect for architecture. Absolutely. To me, it's the most important player in any interior. Followed by compositions. A room is made up of several compositions. Then I consider color. Then I consider pattern. I consider texture. And finally, authenticity. And then I consider them in that order, with again, architecture being the head of the group.
That's cool. I love that you've thought about it so hard. That's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And tell us about the relationship between architecture and interior design.
I think the first and most important design element, like I said, is architecture. I think it is the sculptural skeleton of a room, and it is the most important part of a room. I need to say one thing in caution, though, something I've learned, that interior decoration, we're not talking about architecture, but decoration, can either reinforce or haplessly negate architecture.
Mm-hmm.
When architecture is true and powerful, the designer's job becomes so much easier. You know, any room that has great bones, any house like yours, it's not hard, as long as you don't mess up the architecture. I hold the architecture up on a
That's really interesting. So what would you do if you were an interior designer and you've been given this job and the architecture is lousy and the budgets aren't big enough to fix it? Like, what would you do? Do you have any tips for that?
Yep, I sure do. You pull out the rest of the tools I talked about. You go after the compositions. You can bring scale and power and everything to the competition. Then I think about color.
Mm-hmm.
Then after, those are big chunks, you know, color is a very potent tool.
Right.
Compositions are an important tool. You'll see a picture later where a whole room is just a composition. It is just one big composition.
Okay.
So I go down my list.
Okay. So we're going to go into the next slide, which is and we're going to talk about the architecture of your house in Kiowa.
Okay. Again, like I have said before, architecture is my first element and most important element. The entrance to this house, this is an entrance to our beach house. It has an extremely forceful presence. It's so funny when the UPS men come to deliver a package, they go, "What is this, a museum? What's this place?" They can't quite figure out. It doesn't look like anything else at Kiowa. And you can see how powerful it is. That front door is 11 feet high, which gives you some idea of the scale of this. There's an indoor-outdoor pool that we talked about. And everything is huge because the architecture is so powerful. Finding things that would balance this was difficult. These stone planters are 5 feet across. They're huge. The stone rabbets beyond are 5 feet long.
That's so cool. And then you carry the pavers from outside to inside to outside again.
So you get this feeling of going, imagine being in a normal house, you open the front door and then you go into the foyer. But this is, you're in the pool. The minute you walk up, there's cascading steps that go up for 13 feet before you get to the front door. And it's a powerful, forceful, this is architecture for me at its very best. I just had so much fun doing this.
So cool. All right, Annie, let's go to the next one because I want to make sure we have 5 minutes at the end for questions.
This is obviously in stark contrast to the previous contemporary setting. This is a classic staircase. It differs in style and footprint. The sweeping stair and railing are elegantly articulated, defining a very small space. This space couldn't have been more than 10 feet by 8 feet. It has original Joseph Hoffman chairs that I think support its curve. I think this, like the last slide, is a perfect example of how architecture speaks for itself and certainly is the most important player in the room.
So
I mean, you can
staircase new? Was this
what? Brand new.
It was brand new.
It's an empty space. This was an 8 by 10 empty space.
Wow.
Now the artwork is quite something. This is a house that you'll see a little bit later with some incredible things in it. But what do you see? What do you feel? It's the architecture. You can take everything out of it as far as I was concerned and just leave it like that. The architecture is beautiful. This was all, we found the prototype for this in Paris and we're so excited I'll talk about this interior later.
We'll go on to the next slide. You want to talk about composition?
Yes.
Yes.
Architecture is my first element, design. Composition is my next. Composition is nothing more than the arrangement of objects within a given space. Every room contains numerous compositions, which we have talked about, that range from small to large. The largest of these courses, once again, is architectural footprint. Then is followed by its floor plan, then the larger to smaller seating compositions, and finally tabletop arrangements. I really believe, most importantly, that these compositions drive the success or the failure of a room.
It's amazing. And this is the room that you're sitting in now, right?
Yes. And this room is simply a large composition. It's just one big, large composition. It derives its success and its power from matching sofas and chairs, all in one fabric and all in one color. It's a balanced, symmetrical composition. Symmetry also is a way to bring power to a room. If a room is lacking a certain cohesiveness, symmetry can bring that. You have to be a little more careful with asymmetry. But symmetry is kind of a quick trick.
Right. Well, you have symmetry here, but then you also have things that throw it off, right? I mean, your stools are asymmetrical. You have the little table in the foreground that throws things off. So,
Right.
I mean, that's part of the composition too, right? If it were too perfect, it'd be boring.
Absolutely. And you know, this table was custom designed, custom made with a wonderful craftsman. And this thing is about almost 60 inches square. The scale in this room is powerful. A wing chair is a pretty powerful object. You know, it's got height from anywhere from 42 usually to, 47. The scale in this room, the two pots that you see in front of the windows, they are 48 inches tall.
Wow.
When I first brought them in, I went, oops, I made a mistake. Oh, I made a mistake. And then again, I walk away, I let my eyes rest, and I come back and I went, oh, this is fine. This is fine. It works.
Cool. That's really cool. All right, Annie, let's go to the next slide, which is a different side of scale.
Yeah. This is what's so much fun about composition. It can be big or it can be little. This is a great shot for me. On the mantle are miniature American decoys. They're highly prized and they're highly curated. Let me put it that way. But yet you see all this wonderful American paneling, few little geese and ducks. And to me, it all suits so it can be tiny, tiny, tiny. Now this is all asymmetrical, but I think that works as well as the symmetry of the previous shot.
Right. And this could have gone bad so easily, right? It could have looked like a bunch of tchotchkes, but because the things have authenticity and because of the way you just, they're composed, it's just beautiful.
Well, I was funny. We had a large gathering here at one point, and John Achin, who is a designer, who's a friend of mine, yours as well. I was introducing people and doing all this, and I was a little bit nervous. And John pops up with, those ducks and geese, do they have a name, Nancy? And I just went, what? Everybody started to laugh, and it kind of helped us get through the stuff.
That's fun. All right, let's talk about color. So this is also in that Upper East Side townhouse that we photographed. So beautiful.
Well, color is another thing that I highly respect. I think it's mysterious. I think it's compelling. I think it can be potent. It's personal. But no two pairs of eyes are alike. And no two people see color in the same way. Color depends on the surrounding light, and it changes constantly from daylight to nightlight. I think one of my most important rules about color, always choose your color in the room in which is to be used. If you have a favorite den, put your color in, check what it looks like in daylight or nightlight, and see if you're happy if you spent a lot of time in this room. For me, anything that is ethereal and slightly mysterious is good. It holds my eye, and I really, the more complex it is, the better I like it. I think that.
What color are these walls here?
Oh, they're a whisper shade of lavender, and you wouldn't call them lavender, but if you look through the paint deck, it's kind of in the lavender, pale lavender section. And you know, of course, you were right there with me.
I love this room. I thought it was absolutely, I don't know, I've never seen a room quite as, I mean, it's very luxurious and pure. What I love about it is that it's rather, what would you say? Like it's opulent, but in such a restrained way. I think that's such
Yeah.
a combination. You know, it's like you took stuff away.
Well, and like everything else, color has set a mood. It set a mood. If this, can you imagine if this room had blue walls? Well, to me, this pale whisper color is, you don't quite know what it is. It's setting a mood. It's telling you I'm kind of special. You need to look at me pretty closely.
Yeah.
And I love the pop of chartreuse and the deep aubergine. A little bit of sparkle in the candle sconces. I think this is the most well-designed bedroom I ever did, I think.
Gorgeous. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this is that same room.
Yeah, this is the here are mid-cent, and you know, because you were art directing. These are mid-century French chairs that once graced the salon of Marcel Rochat. And you know, we were looking at this with the photographer, and you just came along and you just gave the chairs a little tweak. And I remember exactly, and I went, "Well, that's really interesting. I love that." And then we brought in the calla lilies, and we were done. We
Yeah,
were done.
it really is a nice shot.
I think what you did brought elegance to the setting, but also there's that touch of whimsy I love.
Yeah, and you do. We're going to get to that in a second. So we're going to run out of time. We might have to skip around a little bit. Let's go to the next one. So this is,
Well, I can talk about this very quickly.
okay.
This is a bronze sculpture by Lalon, of course, my design hero. The sculpture here seems to just emerge from the walls. Again, colors are hard to work. And I think if this room, if you can imagine, would have been painted a soft white, it would not do. It would not do what it does for the elk as the dark walls do.
And you were creating Lalon, collecting Lalon before anybody else even knew about him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which I think also speaks to what I was saying earlier. You know, you don't really get in the fray. You do, you know, you do your own thing. You judge things for their value. You're not really interested in, I don't know, I don't want to say being popular or whatever, but you've managed to really pave your own way in such a unusual and authentic way. And I find that so impressive.
Well, I truly care about my craft more than anything. I care about my craft.
Okay, Annie, let's go to the next.
Are we on slide? Yeah. Now here, sometimes it's very hard for a designer to find a pattern that suits. And there's something about something with hand patination that's really important. And this is a typical example. This was done by Jill Biskin here in Atlanta. Excuse me, an artisan I work with all the time, and they have for years and years. We imagined a softly sanded checkerboard with layers and layers of washed color. I need to say something just quickly about artisans. To me, they are so very conscientious. They have tremendous stamina. Their work is painstakingly tedious. They can be on a ladder, they can be with their back on a board, they can be looking up at the ceiling. I think they deserve so much credit, and I certainly give Jill Biskin this credit. She's a wonderful artisan here in Atlanta. They can work magic, and this now this is a 2-story foyer. This was not an easy trick.
How did it take her to
About 3 weeks, and the scaffolds were all over. She was walking on scaffolds almost the whole time. But when you walk in, you are surrounded, you're enveloped with this pattern.
yeah, requires a lot of patience. I don't think I could do it, but that's awesome.
I couldn't even.
Yeah. Okay, next, Annie, thanks. More pattern. That's so fabulous.
Well, this is, again, scale is so important here. I needed a power punch, so I designed a sisal rug. It's 36 feet long. And then I took it up the walls. I think the rug completes the setting, punctuates the setting, and invigorates the space. This is pattern and how it can be a potent tool.
So you actually took the same rug material and you applied it to the wall?
No, I had a painter come in and paint it.
Oh, I see. I see. That is really cool.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It gave the space that added punch.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, Annie.
Well, this is one of the children's bedroom. The sheep are there, of course, which I love, but when I put it all together, I thought, I need a little punch here. So I used the dots. I love dots.
Yeah, that's so fun.
I think they add a bit of spice to the room. A little bit of visual noise. I like it.
Fun. Okay, next we're going to talk about texture.
Well, that's my fifth element of design. And very simply, every object reveals its character through its surface. Every material is the same thing. I think texture attracts the eye, but also kind of invites the touch. The one thing I want to say here that's so important is when you put a texture on a fabric, make sure the function is considered. You can't put a fragile texture on something that's used all the time. So you need to respect texture and put it where it belongs. And everything in a room has texture.
So when you talk about texture, so this is your kitchen in Atlanta, which I think is so ahead of its time. So it has foot pedals. And for those of you who don't know, to the right where all that paneling is, that's where Nancy has her refrigerator and her pantry. So everything is clean as can be. But when you talk about texture in this room, you're talking about the floors, the stainless steel cabinets, right? I mean, that's how you...
Faucets, table bases, but then there's more and more texture. There's the stainless steel element, there's antique limestone floors, woven wicker chairs, and to top everything, there's Mr. Lalon again. These are his roosters. And they're highly textured clay. And of course, the topiaries add a bit of color and add texture. The whole room is a texture statement entirely. I can't imagine if it were just all painted white and you didn't have the shine of the stainless steel and the texture of the floors and the chairs. It would be a very different room.
Well, you really thought outside the box on that one. That's for sure.
Thank you.
I love it. It's incredible. All right, let's talk about scale and authenticity a little bit.
Well,
Jenny, next slide, please.
Or slide 15. Okay. Authenticity, as I said before, is, it's my sixth element design, but it's one of the most important. Objects show what they were, where they have been, and how they're used. Assembled here is a superb collection of pieces by Roman, Hoffman, Sue, Danhauser, Suimer, and Chirot. And the room is set off by hand-lacquered, book-matched beechwood paneling, custom-made upholstery in the finest calf leather, and silk velvets. My friend's silk velvet. These drapers are all silk velvet.
Beautiful.
And it's a superbly appointed living room.
Annie, let's go to the next slide, please. Oh, so simple and gorgeous.
Yeah. This is the antechamber, and although these are both, all pieces are by Ruhlman. But you know, there is Ruhlman and there is Ruhlman. You know, every craftsman or artisan from time to time produces something that maybe isn't the best he could have, like all of us. This is the best, period. Although they're little, it's a 12-foot ceiling. These three pieces and the clock, the Cartier diamond clock, a special kind of clock that Cartier made. It's an antique. These three pieces hold their own, and they represent the designer's most important work. Again, there's Ruhlman, then there's Ruhlman.
Yeah, and I think that this is such a good example of, you know, when you can really do with a lot less if what you have is, you know, really beautiful quality. You don't need to fill a room, right?
I'm sorry?
You don't need to fill a room. You can keep it simple if you have beautiful things.
This is my friend Simplicity again.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine anything on the walls. I can't imagine adding a thing. This is a powerful statement about my friend Simplicity.
Beautiful. All right. Okay, Annie, let's go to the next, please. Oh, this is one of my favorites. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about whimsy, because one of the things that I find so unique about your work, so, you know, you talk about power and you talk about simplicity, and, you know, you could think it's a little scary if you just heard the words, but when you know you and you see your interiors, there's so much surprise and delight, and I think they like this room, for example, which is one of my favorite rooms of all time of yours, with those polka dotted walls. And I know you haven't changed this room. Like, you've changed a lot of rooms in your house in Atlanta, but this one has stayed the same.
Yep.
How, I don't know, how, I find it interesting that you have a whimsical side, because it doesn't seem obvious at face value. So talk a little bit about whimsy and what that does for you.
I think every interior, most often, even the most serious rooms, can benefit from a little touch of whimsy. It was interesting how this room happened. I was doing a booth at the East Side, again, the East Side Antique Show, and I found a wallpaper that was dotted. The dots were fairly symmetrical and even and placed that way. But I researched it a bit and found it was actually a piece that was at Winter Tour. It had been unearthed at Winter Tour. So then I used it in the booth. It was very different than these dots. And when it came time for this room, I needed the visual jazz. I needed the punch. And I remembered I had seen that wallpaper. So I hired a wonderful artisan, Doug Funkhauser, and he spent 3 weeks dotting the room. There's not one of these dots that's like another one. They're all different, and it circles around the entire room. And I think this is a kind of whimsy. It's serious because it represents something that was used at Winter Tour, but imagine the room without it. So I think any room, almost any room, can appreciate a little whimsy. Now, if the client isn't a whimsical person, no, you don't want to do that. But I love whimsy.
Yeah, it reflects your personality, I think. Okay, Annie, let's go on to the next.
Well, here's whimsy again. This is at the beach house, and it was so funny. I fell in love with more of Robert Quo's work. This is by him. He's a living artisan in New York. Well, he's in New York and China and lots of other places. But I saw these frogs and said, "Okay, I want those frogs." So they were putting them up, and my husband walked in. He said, "You're putting a frog on the ceiling?" I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "No, you can't do that." I said, "Well, watch me." And then one time we were at dinner here at a local place, and the table next to us, a woman was saying, you know, there's this picture I saw in a book. There's a frog on the ceiling. That made me smile. The children love this. This is where they all want to bathe, and that's where they do bathe.
Oh my God, that's so fun. It really is amazing. And then you already mentioned your design heroes being the Lalons, but maybe you can
Oh.
elaborate that. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then if we have time, we'll take one question from the audience.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit why you like Lalon so much.
Oh, well, he captivates me. We were in Paris at the Kling & Core antique show, and actually Jim discovered this one sheep, and I was busy working with a client and an architect, and he said, there's something you need to see. So we kind of escaped away, and I went, oh my God, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about it. I said, buy it. Just buy it, buy it. It was our first piece of Lalon. Oh, it goes back to simplicity. His line, there's not an excess anyplace. His line is so true, so right, and so pure. He doesn't need anything else. And that, I mean, that's my design hero. When things are so simple, they're down to their smallest manipulation. And of course, now all his pieces are in major museums and institutions, and the prices are unbelievable. We have several of his pieces. We're very lucky. I just fell in love with him. We even commissioned him to do some birds for us. So,
So what year was it that you found your first sheep?
I think 30 years ago.
Okay.
And we paid nothing for them. He wasn't known then. He wasn't known. To me, he's beyond genius to just simply do something and say, I'm done.
Yeah, you have to know when you're done, right?
Yeah.
All right.
No one.
Oops, sorry. This is my next question. So what are the most important things that every young designer needs to learn and understand? I always like finishing with that question because this is a master series, and I feel like you have, you know, it's important for you to share those insights.
Well, I think I've talked about it already. I'll just, say it again. Educate your eye. Educate your eye. Find concept that makes you happy. Develop it and stick to it. Experiment, but always educate your eye and care about your craft. I mean, anybody that's successful cares about their craft. So you have to learn to work your craft. You have to learn to set your rules, set your disciplines, set your guides, decide what it is that's important. For me, it was always, it developed into simplicity. And the education of the eye is everything to me. Interior design is fun, but I think it's also pretty serious. A client depends on you and looks to you. And I think you need to give them the respect of training your eye to give back to them.
Right. Well, that is great advice. So actually, I think we have to stop because we're over. I didn't realize that. But this was amazing. I am so appreciative of your joining us, and it was so great to see you. I haven't seen you in so long. I've talked to you, but I haven't seen your face.
Yeah.
Wait, we have one question. Let me just see if we can answer it quickly. Oh, this is just a thank you so much. This is from Kathy Sandler. I'm a longtime fan of Nancy's work and appreciate the engaging and enlightening conversation. We've gotten lots of nice compliments, Nancy. Oh my God, this portfolio is beyond inspirational. I've torn out these photos and saved them. It goes on and on. Lots of wonderful comments, and I'm not surprised.
Good.
Because you are a genius, one of a kind, with a one of a kind approach to design, and I'm grateful you're in my life. So thanks.
And I'm grateful you're in my life.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks everyone for joining.
Bye.
Okay, bye, Nancy.